I look like an actual flaming hot Cheeto, but yeah, let's ignore that. I think it's the lighting situation. Anyways, moving on, because today's video is very different than the normal content I post on my channel, but it's something that, I don't know, it's like kind of set me off. I'm kind of angry about it. So obviously I have a platform and I want to use the platform to try and do some good and promote a message. So this video is going to be about drugs. Decriminalizing, legalizing, people's attitude towards drugs, etc, etc. So before I get into the video, I want to make a very quick disclaimer and say that I'm not in any way promoting drug or substance abuse at all. I'm not judging anyone who chooses to engage in that activity either. Also, if you are concerned about yourself, your own drug or substance abuse, or somebody around you, what I'm going to do is leave some links in the description for where you can find support for those things. So the reason I decided after my 8-hour shift to come home and talk about this was because yesterday I saw an article on Twitter and it really just annoyed me, upset me, and I tweeted about it, and a lot of people liked the tweets and have retweeted it and have shared an opinion. And it seems like a lot of people, obviously I guess, who have liked it and shared it are on my team. And so I think for young people in Ireland, it's something that we're all, you know, I feel like most young people were on the same page with it. So yeah, I guess I just want to talk about it. So basically the article was that Dublin City Council have rejected planning permission for Ireland's first injecting centre. And yeah, so I'm basically going to read out the first statement that they have for why. And it says, so the article opens basically with, Dublin City Council has refused planning permission for Ireland's first supervised injecting facility, saying that opening it would be bad for the area and bad for tourism in the capital. So that was the first thing I read, and I was just instantly so mad. Like, I was like, I can't. Because how on this earth can you claim that a centre that is protected to keep people safe is going to be bad for tourism when there's people in broad daylight? Like, I work in Temple Bar in Dublin City Centre. I would say 2 days out of 7 I see people in broad daylight looking for veins anywhere they can find one to inject themselves with heroin. In broad daylight. Like, last week I saw a guy injecting his toe around the corner from where I work. There's been other weeks that I've seen this one guy quite regularly, and it's really quite sad. He's in a wheelchair. Most of the time I think he finds a vein in his hip, so he has his pants obviously pulled down, and most of the time I see him, he's like already injected and he's passed out with his pants down in his wheelchair. Can't really see too much, but you get the idea. If I was a child seeing that, I know I was a very like curious child. I know I probably would have asked my mom and dad like 10 million questions as to why. And how do you, I'm not a parent, so how do you explain to a child without saying that's a drug addict that that's what it is? And this happens daily. So how the fuck can you claim that it is going to be bad for tourists and bad for the area in general? I understand maybe, you know, businesses, whatever, people don't want to be beside said centre, like they're going to be inside. For me, it makes honestly just no sense that you can claim that that's going to be bad for tourism. I'm going to move on from that topic and the tourism topic, because to me, I just don't really get it. So maybe if someone on the opposing team here has an opinion as to why it could be bad when we have people injecting themselves in broad daylight for tourists to see on the street, how that's better for tourism, please shed some light. Here, for bad for the area, there's fierce local resistance from local businesses and residents. Yeah, so local, which I mean, I get it, but it's still like, it's clearly better than on the street, no. So basically, before I go on to the in favour people of this planning permission proposal, I'm gonna say basically those against it argue that the centre would only increase antisocial behaviour in an area already overcome with drug use and drug dealing. No one just decides one day, if there's a centre open where you can safely take drugs, I'm gonna go and take drugs. Also, I think the idea of these centres are that you have to already have a drug dependency before you can go in there. Also, I think anyone in their right frame of mind, I'm saying right frame of mind, obviously as someone, I'm not an addict, I personally would never in a million years have any desire to go to a supervised injection center. Yes, I understand that these are areas already overcome with drug use and dealing, but I just think if you're not already an addict, you're not just gonna randomly decide one day, I'm gonna go to this center. Chiming in from editing, I think a point I missed here is also on the topic of in areas where there's already drug use and antisocial behavior. I think this is a really good thing in those areas because we've all heard stories of children sitting on dirty needles, children finding dirty needles, people using dirty needles in the streets and that kind of thing. So it takes needles off the streets basically. I think also if young children growing up in these areas aren't exposed to people injecting themselves on the streets, it maybe will take the idea out of their heads. And in terms of the antisocial behavior, I think we need to look at the area as a whole and not the drug problem there, because you need to see where can you improve the social life for young people growing up in these areas, because it's most of the time, you know, especially in lower socioeconomic areas, you know, a lack of things to do or like a lack of education or problems at home is what drives these people to become drug addicts. So you need to look at the social background as a whole before saying it's just going to create more antisocial behavior, when in fact it could possibly decrease antisocial behavior. I just think that's a really backwards, like old-fashioned mindset towards said proposal. And then basically in favor it says it would help save the lives of intravenous drug users and help reduce the antisocial behavior associated with public injecting in the center. So obviously the people in favor, like myself, argue that it's going to save lives and reduce antisocial behavior. I mean, I think it just, as I said, like it takes drugs off the streets, and basically the drug epidemic in Ireland has been a thing for years. It's only growing larger. Like it says here, 1 person per day in Ireland is dying of a drug overdose. In 2016, 736 people died from drug-related causes. It's the 4th highest rate in Europe, and every indicator suggests that numbers are increasing. So by not having these facilities set up, the numbers are increasing. So I mean, why not even try this? Also, these centres were legalised, they were made legal, but Dublin City Council has just rejected the planning permission, I guess because of the opinions that people hold. So that's what sparked me to talk about this video. I just think that whole opinion, I think that a lot of opinions on drug use in Ireland are very, very outdated. Like even hate hearing people say, oh, I'm not giving my money to that homeless person because I just know they're going to spend it on drugs. They're an addict. So what if they spend their money on drugs? They're homeless. If my €4 that I give them gets them their next hit or whatever, and that makes their life easier temporarily on the streets, I don't care. I'm gonna move on to like the difference in drug decriminalization, its benefits, and also the difference between legalization, again, its benefits. I think I've always just been really passionate about this since I studied it a bit in college, and I actually tried to find my college notes, but I couldn't I remembered that my hard drive blew up, and I think all of my notes were on that, and I couldn't find any of my PowerPoint slides, so good times. So moving on to drug decriminalization. The difference between drug decriminalization versus legalization. So decriminalization is basically if you're caught with a small amount, say enough for possession, you may get a fine, but you won't get a jail sentence or a criminal record. And they've done it in Portugal, and I think it's like majorly decreased like the crime level. And also what they have in Portugal is like if you are caught with personal usage, you're offered like classes to get you like back on track with like your health and things like that, and I think they've shown to be effective. So then legalization, basically consumers face no penalty whatsoever, and to supply drugs it's also legal, but it's also taxable. Now I don't know where my head personally is at in terms of class A's for legalization, but I definitely think class C's, especially maybe weed, should be legalized. I just think it's honestly like, why the fuck aren't we taxing that right now? Like in terms of class A's and stuff like that. I just think it definitely should be decriminalized. Basically, here's why I think why. Because sending someone to prison is expensive. You have to pay for their food, you have to pay for the electricity for them being there. It's just an expensive process, and most people that do go in for drug-related crimes are in for short-term sentences. So if you're sending someone to prison for a short time, it's costing so much money for like a petty crime. Like, the other reason I think it should be decriminalized in terms of addicts is because we should be treating anyone who is dependent on drugs is sick, they're unwell. You know, it's the same as a mental health issue. Also, a lot of people on the streets who are addicted to heroin or, I don't know, like meth or whatever, come from a lot of the time poor backgrounds, lower socioeconomic classes. Yeah, also a lot of them have, you know, mental health issues. Even if they are from higher socioeconomic backgrounds, do have mental health issues, and that leads on from the mental health issue to heavy drug use, and that's how they become dependent on drugs. Popping in from editing again here, one thing that I forgot to mention here is that renting in Dublin, buying a house in Dublin is close to impossible at the moment, especially for young people. So obviously that's increased homelessness. As you can see, there's like a lot more homeless people on our streets at the moment, and I just think it's very easy to become dependent on drugs if you're living on the streets, because I feel like a lot of people kind of look for any way to cope. So again, I don't think it's fair to criminalize people when we should be, you know, helping them to find support, to have somewhere to live again, find somewhere to live, because I feel like probably some people become criminals or do drugs and stuff maybe as a way to go to jail if they're homeless. So yeah, again, it's like a social issue that our government should take some responsibility for, and again, just like put people before profit and stop building hotels when we need to support our own people. Back to the video. So I just think, like, why are we treating these people as criminals as opposed to treating them as people who aren't well? And then, so basically in 2008 there was a study done, and if you think about it, that's over 10 years ago, that's 11 years ago. These statistics have definitely risen, but this was one that I found online. In 2008, 59% of people in Irish prison were reported to have a drug dependency, and 52% of those were heroin addicts. And what I do remember from the module I studied in college is that most of the people who are drug dependent in prison aren't in prison for drug related crimes, but they're in prison for crimes they've committed in order to fuel their drug dependency. So robbery, or like, I don't know, like most of the time robbery, that kind of thing. You know, it's never like something like they've done like related to drugs. It's normally something to fuel their dependency. I don't get it. I'm like, if we actually just helped these people get better, then these people wouldn't need to commit crimes in order to fuel their dependency. That's basically what, you know, Portugal did. They send you somewhere to help you find help in order to beat your addiction. And as I said, it's lowered the crime rates in Portugal because I'd say a lot less people are now dependent. Another reason why I had that we should maybe legalize, especially the likes of weed, I do think it would take away gang crime, like, because obviously that is a huge thing, especially in Dublin right now. We all know, we've seen the news. In months there's been a lot of people killed due to drug related gang crimes. So if that was legalized, that would lessen, because it would be regulated. It's not underground, it's like regulated, it's taxed. And I think you just have to look at places like Amsterdam. So I was looking online, and one article I read basically said that teenagers in Amsterdam aren't really, like, they don't really smoke weed because the appeal is taken away when something is legal. Like, I think a lot of people are drawn to the idea to do drugs or do something illegal just because it's illegal, you know, that kind of way. So if you take away the appeal of doing something illegal, like if something is legal, it takes away that appeal, the adrenaline rush, because you're not breaking the law, you're just, it's like whatever. And I also just think, you know, like alcohol is more dangerous than a lot of drugs. Like alcohol is a drug too, nicotine is a drug, so why the fuck do we just sell these drugs in the shop when it definitely causes the same amount, if not more, crime, you know, that kind of way. So yeah, that's a lot of my thoughts. And I guess my final kind of one on this topic is basically basically just, if drugs were decriminalized at the likes of festivals, day events, that kind of thing, it would allow for drug testing stations, which I personally just think should be a thing anyway. We've all heard of people dying at festivals. We have all heard of people overdosing at festivals. We've all heard of people being in a bad state from drugs. And I just think it would be so much safer if drug testing was available. Again, I'm not promoting drug use or anything, but we live in a world where people do drugs. And I don't think, no one's gonna just randomly magically stop taking drugs. So I just think we need to make it safer for people to take drugs, because people take fucking drugs. I guess the main points really are that we need to stop treating the sick people in our community like criminals. We need to reduce the crime. We need to make we need to put our people before tourism, and like stop treating these people like they're nothing, and that like it's okay for them to just die on the streets, literally. And then yeah, I think the main point really is just like it needs to be safer, and there's a way of doing it. I just think, especially in terms of, you know, the injection centers, the government is more concerned about the cost of treating people, the cost of losing tourists, which I don't even think would happen, especially because there's 120 other centers around the world, specifically in the US and Australia and Canada, I think. And people still fucking go to Australia. People still go to the US. People still go to Canada. So I just think it's a really stupid point to argue that it wouldn't. Also, I just think overall, like, Ireland's attitude towards putting tourism before its own people living here is just ridiculous. Like, I don't know if I'd say, you know, people watching this, you probably follow Give Us the Night on Instagram. Ireland's nightlife is gone to shit. We have nowhere left to go. Like, I'm so happy I'm past my like mega partying days, because when I was growing up we had so many options for nights out. Now there's probably about 2 in the whole of Dublin. And also, in terms of making things safer, Ireland's ban on late licensing forces people out onto the streets when it's still dark out at like 3 in the morning, 2:30, sometimes 1. And that's why our like after session culture is so huge, and that's why people end up you know, staying out for days instead of going home at 6 or 7 in the morning. Like other European countries, yeah, I mean, everyone's been to an after session, everyone sees what goes on at after sessions. And I just think, you know, the ban on late licensing creates, you know, an unsafe environment, and also the fact that we've nowhere left to even go out in Dublin, it's pushing people away as well as making the city unsafe. Like, I know personally I don't want to stay in Dublin. Bit of a heavy video. I don't know, I just felt like I really wanted to talk about it and get it out there. I guess, you know, some people are going to argue that it's a totally like liberal point of view, and it is a liberal point of view, but I just think the world's safer and more compassionate. And yeah, so that's my thoughts. Please let me know if you have any down in the comments below. And yeah, thank you for watching this video. Fuck the Irish government, fuck the UK government, fuck Boris, fuck everyone, fuck the world, fuck capitalism. And that's the end of my video. So thanks for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe, and I shall see you in my next video.